Firstly, I want to welcome my panel, and I'm not going to ask them to... Thank you. Yes, let's do that. That's a great idea. And I'm not going to ask them to introduce themselves, nor am I going to introduce them, because frankly, what a lineup. They don't need any introduction. It's probably testament to Continent 8's reputation and standing that they can pull together these five. The only thing I would like to pull Continent 8 up is the fact that I'm the only one that has to stand, and I'm the only one wearing heels, but okay. So to start, I might just start at the far end. And John, you know, we're meeting in the UK the week after Brexit or whatever it is that we have done. And with regards to M&A, reduced advertising, possible application of the FOBT's rules to online slots, and credit card bans and VIP focus, is the UK effectively a locked up, locked in market now for new entrants?
I think, from my perspective, I think I look at it in two ways. I think if you're a full B2C brand with market entry challenges in the United States, I would imagine that's very difficult right now. And I don't think that's necessarily down to the regulatory challenges that we may be going through. It's just a very, it's a very busy space at the moment. But how we look at it from a B2B perspective, the UK certainly isn't locked down. I think there's always an opportunity for new and interesting products. Maybe it's not slots, maybe it's obviously live is a heavy growth area as well. So from a B2B perspective, it's a really important market for us. I think everyone will say the UK is one of our largest markets. It may be less profitable than it was, but it's still profitable. So what are we going to do? Not look at a profitable market? We would have to.
And would others agree with that?
Yeah, I'll chime in as a fellow B2B provider. Nice to see everybody. I agree, this is very good. Yeah, I mean, listen, the UK is becoming more difficult, but that's the direction of travel, whether it's UK or anywhere in the world. It's just becoming more and more regulated. Even markets like the US, which are new right now, I guarantee you in 5 or 7 years, the same type of things will be happening. So it's important to be prepared for that as an industry and as individual suppliers. And I agree, there's always going to be room for innovation. As markets get tougher from an operator side, there will be more consolidation, more difficulties with taxation, limits on credit cards, like you said, et cetera. From a B2B perspective, as long as you're continuing to provide good solutions and innovative solutions that are good for player entertainment, I still believe there is an opportunity.
So that's the B2B perspective, but what about from the operator perspective?
So from a B2C perspective, I mean, clearly the UK market become more challenging. I would definitely not recommend new entries to focus on the UK market. I mean, both cost, taxes, UKGC, new requirements. I mean, it's put it overall quite a lot of pressure, advertising ban as well. So if you put everything into context, in order to be successful in the UK, you need a well-established brand. High street shops is definitely a key advantage. You need to have operation excellence in order to keep good margins. Very strong focus into player safety, responsible gaming, which has become a key area in general and specifically in the UK as well. And overall, quite challenging in a market which is still growing, but probably become more challenging.
And given it's becoming more challenging, Shimon, what are the alternatives? Where should we be looking to? We're talking about the US, LATAM, Africa. What's your view?
Yeah, so firstly, hello everybody, and thanks for having us here. I do agree with my friends here, with my colleagues. The UK is becoming more and more challenging, but it is the biggest online market, at least that I know of, over 8 billion of a market, which is quite big. And obviously the alternatives for all of us is to become more efficient, to keep it more simple. Simplicity probably here is the biggest target of where we should go going forward. And what we should do is we should aspire to go as fast as possible in other growing markets that are also regulated. You can see that, Italy today is about almost 5 billion online market that's betting and gaming together. Spain is just about reaching 995, I think they closed 2019. And some of the other markets are getting there. Portugal is 150 million, just started. So I think our goal is taking that UK success during the last 15 years and copying it as fast as possible into other markets. And the only way to do it is by being obviously more efficient And we just call it, within Plato, we call it simplicity. You need to do things simple and smart and get as many markets. And obviously, the growth markets will be LATAM, which is massive. Everybody knows that Mexico is working very well for us and has a huge opportunity going forward. And I definitely think that the US, in the next 5 years, is just going to explode in the good sense. I mean, New Jersey is a start, and the rest of them.
And there's probably no better person to talk to about that than you, Richard.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Shimon. I think from a SB Tech B2B sports betting provider perspective, I think we're seeing a lot of interest from local clients in LATAM, and also a lot of our European clients looking to access that market. I think you're beginning to see increased regulation, and then you've got potentially Brazil on the horizon, which I think will just increase the interest there. Again, the US obviously has tremendous opportunity and growth. I think yesterday I was reading that one of the investment banks in the US was suggesting that by 2022 you'll have half the population in the US being able to place a sports bet, which is quite unthinkable given that PASPA only passed a few years ago, and they're talking about a sort of $20 billion size market. That obviously depends on if online is going to be allowed. I think another very important area, and I think you'll hear a lot of people talk about this over the coming years, is Africa. SB Tech, we've been really focusing on Africa. For those that don't know, there's tremendous demographic growth in Africa. I think at the moment it's about 17% of the world population, but in about 2040, 2045, it's going to be about 25% of the world population. And in the 18 to sort of 35-year-old bracket, you've got very significant double-digit growth over the next 5 years. You've got double GDP growth versus the rest of the world. And you've got pretty good mobile penetration. Now, there's obviously some difficulties of operating in Africa, network coverage, technology, shady business practices, tax rates. But I really do believe that Africa will all be sat here, and if people don't focus and look at Africa, they'll look back and think they've missed something. So.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as someone who spent the first 20 years of her life in Nigeria, I have some insight into what life is. Yeah, no, quite. I mean, what are others' views of Africa as a market, and how seriously are you focused on it?
Yeah.
And that's really to anyone. John?
Yeah, I'll take these off. Yeah, I'd agree, Richard. It's an extremely big growth area for us. You know, we've had one market rapidly move into our top 6. So for all the reasons that Richard has alluded to, and I appreciate the obvious, South America, the US, hopefully in the future for us, but probably outside of Europe and Asia, Africa is our fastest growing area.
And generally across the board. Just coming back to the US, I mean, if brand and advertising works, and that was certainly most people's approach in the UK and Europe, should companies, EU companies, be spending big in the US to kind of achieve the penetration that we want to achieve?
I don't think there's a right or wrong approach. I think there's both advantages and disadvantages. What I would say is it's all about picking the right brand partnership. Now, it's very early days in the US, so you've got to be cautious to draw too many conclusions. But I think if you look at the sort of traditional casino brands, they've really struggled to gain much market traction, especially in the online space with sports betting, when you've got FanDuel and DraftKings in the marketplace. So, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Penn National last week acquired a stake in a sports digital media company called Barstool, and are talking about rebranding, not using their property brands, but rebranding with this Barstool brand. And likewise, I think sports digital media companies don't necessarily guarantee success. I think if you look at Europe, yes, we've had Sky Bet being successful, but there's very few. So I do think there's probably some really good opportunities for some of the EU brands to gain market share and to grow that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's really hard though to build a brand completely from scratch. Just to go in as a brand that might be popular here in the UK or anywhere across Europe and just assume you're going to follow the same playbook that you've done in other markets is almost impossible. You have not only FanDuel, DraftKings, you have all the brick and mortar, you have some lotteries which have very strong brands in certain states, you have all the sports media. So if you're a European business, I think there is an opportunity because most of the European businesses are more sort of, call it, you know, operationally advanced, you know, understand marketing, sort of, they've been doing it for decades, right? So there is a strategic advantage there, but I think the brand affiliation thing is key. Whether it's a partnership like GVC's done with MGM as an example, Penn with Barstool, adding some operational prowess, that becomes a really interesting play as well. But it's such early days, and right now it's mostly about sports betting, and ultimately when casino happens, then it'll be really interesting, because I think there's more sort of cross-channel marketing opportunities, more sort of brand affiliation, it sort of goes across the pitch when we look at between brick and mortar casinos, land-based, and their online play as well. Yeah.
And, I tend to agree as well. I mean, there's no right or wrong here. I think the US will be a marathon, which we're pretty much in the first 100 yards now. So it's very hard to say what will be the best strategy. We in GVC, we took a very specific strategy. We partnered with a very strong group, MGM, and we have joint venture, a company named Roar, based in New Jersey. We employ more than 200 people there. We have some key competitive advantage or access to the market, including MGM, market access, unique technology and know-how the GVC bring from Europe and deploying it in the US, and very strong access to a player database, both through the MLive MGM loyalty program and through a Yahoo deal that we bring in media. So I think with the MGM heritage brand and overall assets and omni-channel strategy, which has been proven to be very, very strong in Europe, and we are in the very early stages to look how this can be deployed in the US. Again, I will agree with my colleagues. I mean, there's no right or wrong here. There is a strategy, and then there is a very strong execution of this strategy. I mean, execution is as important as the strategy. If you don't execute well, then the strategy becomes just a strategy. So if you put these two things together, I think we are well positioned. It's a good brand. The market is there, I agree. I mean, I read the same research as Richard read, and I actually believe in that. I mean, I think the market will be 20 to 30 billion in the next few years. And it's exciting. I mean, US is very exciting for everybody.
And we talk a lot about the impact of the EU experience on the emerging market in the US. But I'd be interested to just explore what you think about the impact that the US might have back on Europe. So, I mean, as an example, the kind of demands that the NBA and NFL are making on the emerging sports betting industry. Could you see similar bodies over here in Europe starting to make those kind of demands of operators?
I'll take this. I mean, for those of you not familiar with the situation in the US, some of the sports leagues out there have been trying to mandate with legislators the use of official data. Now, thankfully, most states have not gone down that approach. I think only Tennessee and maybe Illinois are looking at that. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with official data, but I think it's how you distribute it. I think a monopolistic approach is not good for competition, not good for innovation, and not good for the industry. I think having official data and having the leagues at the table and being aligned is definitely a good thing. Now, in terms of Europe, will we follow? I think the market here is a lot more developed, where we have both official data and unofficial open source data where people can get access to both. So I think it's going to be very difficult to retrace those steps. And at the end of the day, it's really a commercial decision. And I think if there is official data and it commercially works, and I think the industry will gravitate towards official data.
Yeah, it's probably, my colleagues here are probably more closely aligned with it than me. It's not really a sports side, but I think clearly in Europe it feels like it's a risk. At some point in time, you do feel that the various leagues and others will move towards this. I think as money constraints kick in those areas, be it in football, we're going to see some money constraints.
Let's be clear, most of them already do.
Yeah.
So most of them are already getting a reasonable share.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the risk is that they try and get the additional pound of flesh.
Yeah.
But again, in Europe, the laws are a little bit different, and there is open source non-official, so you've got to be very careful to make sure that the economics are right.
Yeah, that's fair.
We as a business, I mean, we rely mostly on official data. We spend tens of millions a year on licensing on official data, which is proven as the right thing to do in terms of integrity of the data, and the quality of what we provide to our customer, the quality of the content.
I'll just get closer.
Now, I agree with Richard here, is that you should not be enforced that, because the danger of monopoly is that it will, end of the day, cannibalize the economical viability of the market. So we just need to see how this plays. I mean, clearly it's a new market being formed. Different parties try to secure the position in that. So we just need to see how it plays.
And continuing just briefly with the theme of the impact that the US might have on the rest of the world, what about the online, the sports betting regulation that's emerging in the US? What impact do you think that might have on?
Well,
on
I think just
regulation
generally
as well?
the US impact on the global industry is potentially going to be quite profound in a number of ways. I think it's likely to get other countries to start looking at regulation. You're starting to already see a bit of traction in Canada. I think LATAM looks at America. So I think, overall, number one, it'll have an impact maybe in more countries looking to regulate. I think number two is going to be a big catalyst and driver of consolidation. Obviously, I know about that a little bit. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that. I mean, you saw Barstool last week, DraftKings, SBTech recently, Sports Radar buying a sort of sports betting provider. So I think that's only going to increase. And then I think from a sports betting perspective, I think you'll start to see an increasing popularity of US sports outside of the US as companies like myself and Jordan's and Shimon's invest in the sports product. And reversely, I think you'll also start to see, especially as the market expands, you'll start to see a bigger focus and expansion of sort of non-traditional US sports in the US, like soccer, tennis, European basketball, darts even. So I think it'll have a big impact there. And then I think finally, probably an acceleration in the brain drain. I think, you're starting to see that increase with, companies in America looking to sort of scale up. So I think that will continue to have a big impact on the industry.
So with the hugely appealing image of darts being the next big thing in
I
the
didn't,
US,
not necessarily the next big thing.
But most of us come to ICE to learn about what the next big thing in online is. So Shimon, perhaps if I come to you first, what do you think that the next big thing really is for the online industry? Is it machine learning, virtual realities, new media, social platforms, or is it something else?
Yeah, everybody loves to ask that question.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know what the future will hold. It's part of something that we all want to know. And obviously at Playtech, it's a big thing for us. We do a lot of innovation. We invest a lot in that. It's a big focus. If you ask me at this point, I can't really share everything, so forgive me for that. But the little I can, we don't think at this point there is something, one that is single and massive that's going to drive the industry, say as mobile was, say in 2011 and 12 going forward. But yes, there are a few of them. Obviously, algorithm-based and AI, it's not just about that, it's about having that in real time. So if a player has a bad session or unlucky session, you need to make him happy in that session, otherwise he's not going to come back. If you do that in real time, there's a double-digit percentage of a better chance of getting him back already for a second chance. So if your platform can't really deliver real time, algorithm doesn't work, so just the AI by itself is not a standalone. That's probably one part that's kind of driving the industry. The other one, everybody's asking about AR and VR. I personally, obviously we have people contemplating within Playtech what to do now. Obviously we have a few products. We have an AR roulette and a slot, but I think the industry is still not there in terms of the hardware, the devices themselves. I think maybe you can see now Microsoft HoloSense 2, something that's kind of a hybrid between AR and VR. So you have the reality, but you still see it. It doesn't block you completely. And for me, at the end of the day, it's when my kids and my friends' kids and everybody ask for the hardware, then I know it's going to be, because they are always the first acceptors in that sense. And probably the third thing, maybe starting as well, that looks interesting, has to do with sports. Maybe esports is going to pick up in the world. I've just seen some information, some data about that. I saw one of the teams is worth over $500 million, which is amazing. If you take Chelsea, about 1.09 of worth, then having an esports team worth $500 million, maybe it's some kind of a trend. But all in all, I think it's more of a mix going forward than a single thing that will change us.
And John, the last time
But
I
I'd like
was-
to get a fight here, so
Yeah, no, exactly.
you're welcome.
Exactly.
You're welcome.
And the last time I was wearing a VR headset was wandering around the top floor of Microgaming with the LoveTech crew and all the kids. So over to you.
I think it's safe to say, I don't know what the next big thing is, and I'd be surprised if anyone of my learning colleagues knows that. I think the one thing that so two things I would say really on this is that the thing that I think the industry is very good at is actually looking at other technologies that have been advanced in other industries and bringing it within the gaming space. So let's be honest, the gaming industry didn't invent the use of AI. I'm sure we didn't invent the mobile. However, what we do is take that technology and actually utilize it or maximize its opportunity in our space. So I suspect it's something like that. I'd be looking to what the social trends are. I'd be looking to the new consumer trends and figuring out, is our product compatible with what the new consumer wants? So I think it's probably looking outside of the industry, we'll find the next big thing. Internally, what are we doing? I guess for the past 12 months, this is probably the single most area that we've invested the most in is in innovation. And really it's around trying to socialize internally or crowdsource innovation within our business. I don't know how many of you here, you set up an innovation team and you have around 10 people at it and you assume that's innovation. I think I've learned that that's not the case, that you have to work hard at it. How do you actually get, if our combined teams of thousands of people around the world, imagine you tapped into that brain power, you will do something interesting. I suspect a lot of businesses don't tap into their brain power more widely enough.
I'll add on, just for the sake of it, I'll disagree with you.
Excellent. I never took you as innovative, so it's not a problem. Don't worry.
It's dangerous
No,
to disagree with you. No, but in all seriousness, I think the one thing that the industry has talked a lot about but hasn't done that great, and I'll talk about on the casino side, is really building like sort of social type features into the games. Just saying like, oh, I have like a little chat room, or oh, I have a little like social media interface. That doesn't mean anything. But I mean like really building social features into a game, which increases retention, stickiness, interest from players. I just don't think the industry's done a great job with that. And I think that I don't know if that's super innovative, I just think it's more execution, taking a great idea, to your point, from another industry, social gaming, and applying it into real money gaming. And I think that's also interesting when you go back to your comment about regulatory, the regulators want to see that. They don't want to see as much hardcore, VIP. There's been a lot of stuff here in the UK about VIP players, which is more just the hardcore, straight ahead slots. So I think having a mix of that type of game and those types of platform features will actually serve the industry really well from two perspectives. One, introduce new consumers, new demographics into this great industry, and then two, satisfy regulators at the same time. So I think there's a great opportunity there.
I actually agree with you.
Come on. Look at that. SG and Playtech.
And as someone that is a relatively recently appointed CEO, we haven't got too much longer, so I'm going to take the opportunity to get the benefit of your experience, all of you, to ask what advice you would offer anyone coming into the role of CEO, either as an operator or as a service provider in this industry, looking back at your experience. Perhaps we start with you, Shai.
Sure. So I think we touched most of the point before. In general, the gaming industry become more mature, and my advice to a CEO which will come in would be to focus on operational excellence. As markets become more mature, it's become very important to operate under a very clear business model, where today things like player safety, superior customer experience, contribution margin costs become very key. So this is definitely one area. And then again, markets. I mean, markets is again another thing that entering CEO we should look at. Basically, how we diversify based on all the regulation which is coming in.
I would say that you need to be very forward thinking and be really thinking about the future and really focused on it, because we're in an industry that's changing very, very rapidly, and you need to make sure that you're aligned with that and you can keep up with those changes. I sort of slightly disagree with Shai in a way, which is I think it's all too easy to get really bogged down in the sort of day-to-day operational minutiae and sort of lose sight of the bigger picture. I think you need to have one foot in the present, but you need to always be constantly looking at the future so you can sort of help direct your team to make sure that you're in a position to obviously really face those challenges head on.
So firstly, when I joined Playtech, Shai was my manager and my CEO, so I can't disagree with him, I'm sorry. Yes, I have to love him anyway. My thoughts are that, first it starts with information. So anything and everything you do, my belief is you really need to understand the market. You really need to understand what are the macro trends within the market. And if you successfully identify those macro trends and you steer the business in that direction, my personal belief is that is the route to success. And just to keep it short, I also think whatever you do, especially in a market that's now about, online market is about 20 years old. Obviously, the gambling industry is much older. And it's all about always trying to be the best in whatever you do. So if we live in a highly competitive market, especially such as UK and some others, you need to be the best in whatever you do. It's the only way to really make sure the business is successful. Get a lot of information, work hard, be the best. That's my advice.
Agreed. I'd say a couple things. One is, coming from outside the industry, just be ready for a level of regulatory scrutiny that goes way beyond the realm of anything you can imagine. It's shocking to me how many execs have come from outside of this industry, and they're like, "Oh wait, why do I have to disclose all that?" Well, do you want to participate in that market or not? So I think that's one sort of obvious thing. Another thing is sort of just the fluidness of the industry and the flexibility of plans. Yes, important to have an operating plan and be organized, but the global market here in this industry, I would argue, is more fluid, more dynamic than pretty much anything else that I can think of. So just be dynamic and be fluid. And the third thing would be sort of talent mix. I've seen executives come in and just assume like, oh, this is an old industry, people don't know what they're doing, and just go and bring a bunch of people from fintech or some other digital technology industry, and that doesn't work. I think there's a mix. That's probably a majority of in-industry management you need to have, but with a little bit of outside, because it's important to have that perspective. But don't overbalance and assume this is an industry that's old, it's been around for a long time, and they don't know what they're doing, and we can do things better with more cutting-edge technology. Because I've seen people get burned a lot by that.
I think maybe steering it away slightly just from the gaming side. My experience is, first of all, it's really hard. It's more challenging than I ever imagined, and that's been the first 2 years in. It's just bloody hard work. My advice would be, apart from don't do it, it would be invest in your people. I think we don't know everything. I don't know everything. Invest in good people. I think invest in a diverse workforce. I think that's hugely important. I think we can get there's a trend with the panel that's up here. I don't think that's healthy necessarily, and I do think that needs to change. But also in your workforce, I do think you need that diversity. Hire really smart people, and I didn't make it up. I'm not sure who exactly said it. If you're the smartest person in the room, then you're hiring the wrong people. My advice: hire smart people.
Well, I certainly support all of those messages, John, so thank you. And so finally, it's Continent 8 who have brought us here together for this conversation, and as I said at the start, I think it's a pretty amazing group of people that they've managed to bring together. And I really just wanted to pay my own tribute to Continent 8 because of the partnership that we've had with them at KPMG, in particular around our e-gaming summits, because when we made the decision to launch those back in 2010, Continent 8 were the first to step up and support us, and it was quite a big thing for a Big Four firm to do, to really put themselves out there and say, we want to provide a thought leadership event for the industry. And Continent 8 have supported the most important element of that summit series, because after every event we produce a comprehensive report so that not just the 300 or so attendees get the benefit of what was said on the day. And actually it was one of your colleagues, Shai, who really brought home to me the value of that report, because Rob Wood proudly states that he has never been to a summit and is probably never going to come to a summit, but he eagerly awaits the report every time, and not only that, circulates it to his entire team. And Continent 8 have funded every one of those reports in the Isle of Man, Gibraltar and Malta since we began the series in 2010. So we've certainly had a great partnership with them at KPMG, and I think all of you have had equally long and fruitful partnerships with them. So I imagine your experience has been somewhat similar.
Yeah, could I maybe take this? I think our relationship with Continent 8 probably goes back to when we both seemed to start in the industry. I think in many cases we worked with CA to enter new markets, new geographical regions, and they supported us to some extent, at times on a wing and a prayer. We have a customer, we need a data center, please build one. It was at times it was as simple as that. So over the years, Continent 8 are and will remain a key partner of ours, but most importantly, they're our friends. They're the best at what they do, and I can say that over a relationship that extends probably around 22, 23 years at this stage. So Continent 8 is a hugely important part of our business, and I can highly recommend them.
Yeah, I would also like to add to that. I mean, Continent 8 has been sort of central to our global growth strategy in both existing and new markets over the last couple of years. And we really look forward as we enter new markets over the coming years that that relationship builds and strengthens.
I would just agree with my colleagues. I mean, Continent 8 are a very strategic solution provider for GVC. We work very well. They are a key fundamental part of our US strategy growth, which helping us to enter new markets, new states very, very fast. We wouldn't be able to do it without Continent 8. Key partner for us in Europe as well. Great partnership, great people. Thank you very much for having us here.
Yeah, and I'll just say that one of the things, I obviously agree with everything everyone said, but one of the great things also is that when there are problems, and as everybody knows, there are always problems in 24/7 IT, they're there and rock solid for support. So that's one of the things that I've really appreciated as well, is that, you know, when the going's good and it's growth, they're of course there because we're ready to grow together and make, you know, have success together, but then when the going gets tough, they're always there and can be relied upon.
I'd love to disagree, but just to keep it interesting, but I have to agree, you know, with all my friends here. I mean, obviously, you know, material part of what we do is go into business meaning going to new jurisdictions, new databases, new data centers, and it always makes sense to work with Continent 8 on expanding the business in the US and elsewhere. And again, second time I agree with you, Jordan. I think, you know, relationship is really measured, you know, not just at the easy times, also when you have some challenges. And the good thing about Continent 8, they're always there. You can always pick up the phone, always work with them. Doesn't matter if it's the weekends, the days, the nights. And I think that's the point that you grow to value them even more. So, and once again, thank you for inviting us.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to Continent 8 again. I'm sure this is a very nice start to ICE for you, particularly all of that praise echoing in your ears. But I just wanted to particularly thank one of you, which is Roberta, because I don't think there has ever been a more well-organised panel in the history of time, has there? So thank you, Roberta. Always wonderful to see another woman doing so well in this industry.